Vaclav Havel Library Foundation is proud to launch the initiative Havel at 80 together with the Vaclav Havel Library and Art for Amnesty. Havel at 80 is an open project, an umbrella, under which we would like to gather and promote all the projects that will be dedicated to Václav Havel in 2016, the year when he would have been 80 years old. We will honor Václav Havel's life and work by presenting his plays, by organizing lectures and discussions, by dedicating new Havel's places, but most importantly by encouraging young people, current students, to read Havel's crucial texts and to think about what they mean for us today. We will celebrate Havel at 80 all around the world with people to remind them of his ideas of global citizenship and responsibility, of his great writings and humor, and hope in our ability that each of us can advocate for human rights and can make this world a better place for more people. We would like to invite everybody to join Havel at 80 with their own projects, with a seminar, lecture, exhibition. Please let us know about them. Let's together make 2016 Havel's year.
Thank you, Pavla. My name is Bill Shipsey. I'm the founder of Art for Amnesty, which is Amnesty International's global artist engagement project. And we were honoured and flattered to be invited by the Václav Havel Library Foundation and Pavla to join in the project Havel at 80. Amnesty International's association with Václav Havel goes back a very long way. And in fact, in my case personally, he was one of the first prisoners I worked on in 1977 when I joined Amnesty International as a student in Dublin. And then in 2003, when I inaugurated what has become Amnesty International's most prestigious human rights prize, the Ambassador of Conscience Award, there was only one person in my mind who was deserving of this. And the first Ambassador of Conscience Award was presented to Václav Havel by Seamus Heaney, our late great Nobel literature poet, in Dublin in 2003. So for me to be joining with the Václav Havel Library and the Václav Havel Library Foundation is a great honour. We really want as many people around the world to get to know more about Havel. We want to celebrate a great life. We want to show to the world the example that he gave us, and we want artists in particular to join us in this project.
I'm Oskar Eustis, Artistic Director of the Public Theater here in New York City. I'm proud to say that Václav Havel had a long and deep relationship to the Public Theater throughout his career. In the first season that we were producing in this building here on Astor Place, 1967-1968, Joe Papp, my predecessor and the founder of the Public Theater, produced Václav Havel's A Private View, a collection of interrelated one-acts that was an enormous success for us, an enormously important moment in the public's history. It was, of course, in 1968, and Havel could come here for those shows and saw those shows. He also got to see another Public Theater production that premiered that same season, Hair, and he loved it. It was the first show we'd ever done. And somehow the idea of this Czech dissident and writer being able to see Hair here at the Public Theater side by side with his own work is to me a joyous and glorious image. Of course, things got much tougher in Czechoslovakia after that, and Havel was not able to come here for subsequent productions that we did of Havel's work. As a matter of fact, Joe Papp went and brought him the Obie Award that he won for Lager Desolado at his home in Czechoslovakia, because at that point Havel was not allowed to travel. The last great act of Havel's career, when in the wake of 1989 and the Velvet Revolution, he became president of the Czech Republic, is so unbelievable that were it a piece of fiction, we'd have to reject it. But it actually happened in real life, and that is an inspiration not only to us here at the Public, who have loved Havel for so many decades, but really to the whole field, because he lived out the dream that we all have, that somehow by telling the truth not just in an objective scientific sense, but by telling the truth of our hearts, by being true to our own vision, by being true to our sense of integrity, that we can actually help change the world. And Havel did that. He did that as a writer, he did that as a dissident, he did that as a prisoner, and then ultimately he did that as president of the Czech Republic. A saga that is inspiring and glorious, because what it says to us is not just that Havel is a great artist, but that it's actually possible for art to matter. It's possible for a writer to change the world, not only with his writing, but with the example of his life. And nobody did that with more integrity, more humility, more humor, and more beauty than Vaclav Havel.
I first encountered Havel's work when I was a student at Johns Hopkins, and I was a freshman, and I had to look for a play to direct, a one-act play. And so I went to the library, and there was this huge stack of plays, and in the middle of it, I found Audience, and it felt like the right play for me, though I didn't actually direct it for a few years. But it sort of was an entree for me into his work. And I was already a big fan of Ionesco and Beckett and the absurdists in general, so it wasn't a big leap for me to take. And so right after I started looking into his work, the Velvet Revolution happened. And suddenly I was hearing he was leading the revolution, he had become president, and I thought, my God, Czechoslovakia is the best country in the world. Where they make their absurdist playwright the president. My first piece that I did in New York was Audience, finally, because I had been waiting to do that. And it was just it was the most basic production I've ever done. I was the director, the stage manager, the set designer, the lighting designer. I was everything, because I was just starting out. Years passed, and I ended up doing a festival of Ionesco's work, and worked with his daughter, and I was trying to think of the right thing to follow that up with, and it occurred to me that this a festival of Havel's work had never been done, and I really wanted to do it. So I wrote to his agent, and I happened to be going to Europe for other reasons, and just decided to go to Prague on the chance that it would work out. And my girlfriend at the time thought I was insane. But I thought, well, we'll visit Prague regardless, and if nothing ever happens, we'll visit Prague. But then I was able to meet with his agent. He was feeling a little under the weather at the time, so he wasn't able to meet with us. And we started planning this festival for his 70th birthday. So I started putting it together, and then I got a call from Greg Mosher from Columbia that Columbia wanted to also have him in town, and we started collaborating about having him in town at the same time at the festival, and so that was very exciting to us all. So he came into town, and I had no idea. I knew I would meet him at a reception, and I knew that he was planning to come to one of the shows. I thought maybe it would be a very limited meetup. I had no idea what was going to happen. And so the first time, it was this crazy crowd of people, and he sort of barely registered who I was until Havel Kazarova, who was the consul general at the time, explained to him. And then he gave me a very nice greeting. And then I didn't see him again until he came to the show. And it was the opening show of the festival. It was the show I had directed, the memo. And he was sitting in the first row, and I was sort of sitting terrified in the back row, watching him. And he started to laugh, and I was deeply, deeply relieved. And then he just started coming to the shows and appearing at the theater at all times. And it was this amazing experience of having somebody you knew about and had idolized to an extent, and suddenly there he was, and you were talking. I was talking to him, and you know, we got together at Martin Polish's house to have a private conversation, and then he would come to the theater, and he showed up at our Velvet Revolution party with Madeleine Albright, and you know, it was really one of the more remarkable experiences of my life.
My name is Peter Cies, and my memories of Vaclav Havel are a few, and most of them very nice. The best one in terms of politics is when he came to New York, downtown, where we are, with his first government, and decided to walk on Bleecker Street towards CBGB's rock club. And we lived on Bleecker Street then, and I knew lots of people who were in the government who were just in t-shirts and leather jackets, and this was the time when Vaclav Havel got out of the car and created confusion for the secret agents because they didn't know how to follow him. And then we all went to CBGB's, and I remember it was a time when the United States government told all the avant-garde artists who were around Havel that if they are in the Czechoslovak government, then they should really get jackets and ties and look like a government, and they shouldn't really have these leather jackets. And there was a big celebration in St. John Divine with many famous people, Gregory Peck and Mira Farrow speaking, and President Clinton. And I remember the biggest problem was not to let Frank Zappa to come, because Frank Zappa was very close to Václav and the government, and it wasn't in interest of the politics to have Frank Zappa. So everybody was forbidden to give Frank Zappa the ticket, and Frank Zappa was calling how he can get to St. John Divine. And I think this is where Frank Zappa stopped being advisor of the Czech government. And till today, if I see any politician in the jacket and the tie, I just think about the time how it was so relaxing when everybody had a t-shirt. So that's my memory of Václav Havel.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Vega, and I'm speaking to you on the anniversary of the signing of Charter 77, which is an important day and an important document. And it's still important today, all these years later, because human rights are not something that's just one time and then it's finished. The fight for human rights continues all the time, because there are always people who want to try and take them away from you, and so that's why we need to continue to fight for human rights all the time, every day. It's important to remember Vaclav Havel. He was a great man in many respects. He endured a lot in the name of human rights. He went to jail for 5 years, and he suffered because of that. And then later on, he came out and led his country. And he did that with grace and with style. And some of that is because he was a playwright. He was an artist. He wasn't so much a politician, but he was a great artist. And so through his vision, he was able to lead his country in a peaceful, nonviolent way. And his message and the way he lived is still very important today as an example of how this is possible to live like this. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm telling you this, because I still remember him. I miss his presence in the world. We were kind of friends. We wrote emails to each other, and if he ever wanted me to do anything like sing at the concert, I would, of course, happily do whatever he had asked me to do. So his life and his words, his work, is still meaningful to me, and I believe is still meaningful in the world today, and always will be.
Mraz, or George Mraz, as they know me here, well, most of the world. And I worked with or for Vaclav Havel around 1962 to 1964 for about 2 years in a little theater called Nazabradli, where he was the boss. And he employed a jazz trio, which I was part of. The pianist was Misha Polak at the time, and the drummer Pavel Burda. And we became very good friends. After about a week, we were on first name basis, and everything was great. Then I finished the conservatory, and I had a scholarship to Berklee College of Music in Boston. So when he became president, he invited me to play at the Prague Castle several times. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to see him because he was either here in America on government business, or he was in a hospital because he already had some problems with his lungs. So the next time I saw him was about 45 years later, 2008 or 2009, in some place in Slovakia. I can't remember the name of there was a big festival, and there were several venues in big tents. 2 people came in, I assume Secret Service people, because they had those earphones with the wires hanging out. And they said, Mr. Havel would like to speak to you. So, okay, so, and his dressing room was a big tent, much bigger than mine, of course. It was a fully equipped bar, and there were maybe 30 to 50 people. And so I came in, and he jumped up, and he just hugged me and kissed me and everything, and blah, blah, blah. Finally, I see you again. And I saw it, Mr. President, I said, nonsense, Vasek. You are Jirka and Vasek, like the old days. Nothing has changed. Told me, remember this story when we were here on the road with the theater, with singer Lyuba Hermanova? And I said, of course, how can I forget? I couldn't believe that he even remembered who I was, but he remembered every detail, actually more than I did. Just to set up the scene, the trio was these stage sets, these contraptions. We were like standing on it, or the drummer was sitting, of course, back to the audience, and the stagehands just turned us around. And of course, that afternoon, myself and the pianist Misha Polak happened to go to a wine tasting. And I think a few of the stagehands went someplace to wine tasting also, because they turned us around pretty fast. and Misha Polak just fell right when they turned him around 180 degrees, so he fell down right next to the piano. And I fell on top of him with the bass. Now the drummer was okay because he was sitting, so he was playing brushes, he was playing the intro. And Lieber Hermann came in, took the microphone, and looked at us and said, "That's what's going on." And Misha Polak was trying to get his hand up to, put his finger on the note that she was supposed to start singing. And he couldn't because I was on top of him. And I tried to figure out how to get off him without hurting the bass. So it was probably about, 20 seconds, but to me it seemed like half an hour. But eventually we got it together. But Mr. Havel remembered the whole thing entirely. I mean, he actually told me the story the way I just told you. And plus he had some extra information, for instance. And I never got paid for that performance. And he said, "It doesn't matter." I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "It doesn't matter. It's just peanuts anyway." And he said, so I had to fire somebody. And because I liked you, so I had to fire the piano player. But since there was no music, you guys played from memory, and I couldn't find anybody for the next day because it was in the middle of the tour. I had to hire him 8 o'clock in the morning before he left the hotel to go back to Prague, to get up and hire him again. And he said, well, that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. We were just laughing like crazy. Of course, the people didn't know what we were talking about. But anyway, it was, the next time and the last time I saw him, he was a wonderful person, and he was really a little frail, but he had that spark in his eyes, even more so than before. It was incredible. He was a great man.
The way one thinks about Vaclav in history is a man of intellect, of humor, of philosophical reach that made him the unique individual that he will be remembered for throughout our lives and beyond. During his visit, he was surrounded by writers who came from all over this part of the world to be with him. Bill Styron, Philip Roth, Arthur Miller, and so many others who live in this part of the world or near it, who assembled around him. And typically, Vaclav, he listened. He asked questions. He wanted to be among his colleagues and have them hear him, but more, he wanted to hear them. He received information in a remarkable way, and he loved being in that environment of his colleagues. The humor that was in him was what really charmed most of them about who he is and who he was. I think that in life going forward, this memory of Vaclav as the supporter of the individual, as the believer in the responsibility of an individual, of the power of the powerless, the issues that he raised and that he placed before us were of historic significance. And as the world goes through the trauma it is today, his message is unmistakably a consistent reminder of his belief that people can make a difference if they take the responsibility to do so. During his visit here, he was with his good friend Milos Forman, which you see in the picture with Michael Jantovsky, who was with him. And we saw this part of the world which probably reminded him a bit of Havlicek, of his own little cottage up in the village outside of Prague. And we were all reminded of who he had been before he became president. There was very little effort to defer to him as the president of Czechoslovakia, but there was great admiration for what this philosopher king had become. And Wendy will tell a bit about what this new legacy will mean, what this legacy will mean in the new efforts that she's undertaking with the Vaclav Havel Library in Prague.
Indeed, and because as a matter of introduction, when we arrived in 1983, when Vaclav Havel had just gotten out of jail, when Bill was the American ambassador in communist Czechoslovakia, and very soon thereafter we met this man, and his dynamism and the fact that everybody was attracted to him and that he was always surrounded by people was immediately apparent to all of us. And we became very close to Vaclav and to Olga and gave the inaugural dinner the night when before he became president. He wore Bill's tie, Olga wore my blouse. And that is that kind of enduring friendship which Bill has just described when he came here, even though he was being in the role of an intellectual and a writer and a philosopher, the Secret Service was still outside the door, making sure that they were protecting the president of Czechoslovakia at that point. That's all of these memories and all of his influence around the world in the area of human rights and literature and theater, etc., are the reasons why a group of us, including a large number of the former ambassadors to Czechoslovakia, founded the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation a couple of years ago. And that legacy, with Havel at 80, and we hope that Havel at 100, will continue with all of the efforts of the American-based Library Foundation and the Vaclav Havel Library, Presidential Library in Prague, which is based upon the model of a U.S. presidential library. And so we hail this man, we hail his legacy, and we hope that we can contribute to his enduring legacy. Thank you very much.
My name is Alex Lane. I'm a producer and director with Invisible Girls Theater Company here in New York. And towards the end of February of 2016, we are putting on a series of one acts, including Vaclav Havel's Unveiling. And we decided to put on Unveiling because it's one of the Vanek plays. And Vanek is a character who, as many people know, represents Havel and directly related to some of his experience and what happened in his life. But to me, they're very funny. They're some kind of absurdist plays, and just he's a very relatable character to me as someone who works in theater and is not really used to being put in these kinds of situations. Where, so Unveiling is the first play that we're putting on. It's very funny, and it reminds me of a lot of sitcoms, American television, and once you start to learn about it, the background of this play, you find out that there's a lot more to it. It has to do with what was going on during communism, and it's actually very upsetting. But on the surface, it's hilarious. We love it, and we hope that you can come see our show.